going live now.
Okay.
And, just play it by ear as usual, but we're going live. We are now live. And good evening to all. We are recording. You're recording to the cloud.
Got it.
Bill, it's so nice to have you here as Bill Johnson. Seed saw it confuses me, and I bet it confuses everybody in the Western world.
Well, I did a recent business meeting, and it was on like Google Meet or whatever it was, and it said at the bottom, and it was backwards, so they could see it. I could see the backwards of it. It says William Johnson, Chairman of the American Freedom Party. So everybody, while we're having this big old meeting with lawyers and everything, they're all looking up, what the heck is the American Freedom Party? And you can see they go, yeah. And so I can't use that computer for Google Meets, but for Zoom, it's okay. But I don't really set the names. Someone else has set them for me. And Seed Sue, I'm not sure who set that one, but that's fine. William D. Johnson is fine. It's just that when they start talking about my politics in meetings with corporations and lawyers, I think it's a little bit distracting.
Especially when the lawyer is named Emmett Goldstein.
Shapiro.
Shapiro.
But, okay.
Okay. Well, anyhow, Bill, do you have, I don't think you and I have ever discussed the events of June 2015. And what is your perspective on how and why it happened when it happened?
Is that the Dylan Roof incident that you're talking about, where he shot a bunch of those senior citizens, Black parishioners worshiping in a church?
Well, first off, I mean, do either you or Sean think that senior citizens, senior Black citizens are really the key group that poses a threat to our continued existence as a race?
Yeah, I think though the fact that he went after a church means that that's who he's going to get, because most churchgoers now are senior citizens. So that's who he'd get. But yeah, I think that that group of people were not causing a great deal of harm to, even in his mind. So I don't know why he did that to them.
Well, here's the thing I wanted to kind of focus on. You and I and Sean believe that there are problems based on race in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
But given the seeming intense irrationality and the careful timing, to my mind, careful timing of this event, can we entertain the idea that this was a plan and a setup?
I don't know that it was a plan and a setup. I don't really subscribe to what is it called? Theories of conspiracies and things like that. I think he was just a disgruntled young man who I believe, and maybe I don't have my memory correct, but I think he wanted to start a race war. And that was no different than what Helter Skelter was when we were kids growing up. And Helter Skelter, you know what that was, Sean, don't you?
Wasn't that what's the guy's name? The guy who had
the guy that was running around with one of the Beach Boys.
Was that guy who had the Nazi tattoo on his
yeah.
Well, I can't remember his name. Geraldo Rivera interviewed him once in prison.
I can't remember his name. He is
Manson.
Yeah.
And not Marilyn Manson, by the way.
Yeah.
Definitely.
But that's what he wanted to do right then. And he was really a conundrum for the media, because the media, because they perceived him as being a harbinger of the hippie era, and then he carved a swastika on his forehead, and his supporters carved swastikas on their foreheads, and all these they're all these girls, and it all took place in my area, Los Angeles. But he did that to start a race war, and then now comes Dylan Roof.
Hey,
I'll
maybe
try to do the
Paul will be joining us. Let's see the same.
thing.
Paul, are you there?
Yeah, did you send me
Have we lost him again, Sean?
No, I think he's there. I think we just need. Oh, you know what? I think you're locked up for a bit. William, can you hear me?
Have you lost me? Both of you guys are frozen. Am I the one that's frozen out?
Well, I think on my end you're frozen.
I did. I always do. I always do. I mean, and yes, all of the things I send to Paul from get returned these days.
You're not frozen now, William.
Yeah, okay. He's talking on the phone.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
I have just been so insanely busy with that.
Okay. So, but anyway, Charles, why don't you mute yours?
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead. Go ahead, Sean.
Paul, have you gotten everything you need?
Okay. I guess he's trying to get Paul in, I guess.
Yeah. All right.
I think
Is Paul Fromm going to come in?
yeah, he said he would, but now he's not saying anything. He's having trouble with his email. Life is just chaotic. But Sean, what do you think? I mean, do either of you know about the Denmark VZ connection?
The Denmark what?
VZ connection.
Easy as in
VZ.
Okay, no.
Or VZ, perhaps. This should be close to Bill Johnson's heart, because I know that he cares deeply about the Haitian Revolution. And Denmark Vesey was a black slave in South Carolina in June of 1821 or 23, I believe, who tried to start a Haitian Revolution in South Carolina. And what's interesting is that Dylan Storm Roof started his shooting on the same day that Denmark Vesey started his.
Coincidence?
Yeah,
I
mean,
random coincidence?
Denmark Vesey was going to start the largest slave rebellion that had ever happened in the South.
Yeah, I think that's all coincidence. I mean, it's like someone was talking to me about Adolf Hitler's birthday, which was like 4/20, and then 4/20 has something to do with marijuana sales. And so you can you could say, oh, such happened on this day. Oh, that's Rhonda Fleming's birthday. And Rhonda Fleming was a redhead, so they must hate gingers. Yeah, I mean, you could just come up with all sorts of crazy stuff. I'm not saying that's crazy. Well,
somebody just did that with the war in Ukraine too. The start of World War I, World War II, and the start of the war in Ukraine. I don't remember what it was, but I saw something like that out there on the web.
Absolutely no coincidences on either World War I or World War II as far as the winter, because both of those wars started in the late summer.
Yeah. Well, I do think that sometimes it's not a coincidence. For example, Christ was born on Christmas Day, so some things just happen to work out.
Well,
you guys don't know where that's come from. But
if you had, say, a major bombing of a church on Christmas Day, you wouldn't assume that was independent, would you? If somebody bombs
have we lost him again?
You can't hear me?
You can't hear him? Okay, William is frozen on mine. Oh, Paul's coming in, and
I can hear every other word, which is probably just right. Great. Can't hear you.
All right. I think what's going on is Paul's joining, and while Paul's joining, the server just locked up for a bit.
Paul, how you doing?
Hello?
Hi.
I can't hear anybody. except me, and I'm the only one I want to hear anyway. Here comes Paul. Hey, Paul, how you doing?
Ah, worn out. I was off protesting today.
Really? That's good.
Paul, you're the only one of us who actually does anything interesting these days. What were you protesting?
Oh, the usual. The truckers' protest just keeps on. It's not over. It's no more mandates, an end to all restrictions, rehiring all the people who got fired because they wouldn't take the jab. I mean, there's a huge protest in Toronto and in various other cities right across the country. This is not going away. They thought they would there'd be they would squelch the Ottawa protests, and that would be it. Then they go on to the next issue, which I guess is the Ukraine. But this is
you guys. I think it's my computer. I've got a sign saying that the internet connection is unstable. I'm going to hang up here and I'm going to go to a more stable computer. So you guys keep talking and I'll rejoin you in a couple minutes.
Okay.
Hurry back.
All right, I have a great question I wanted to ask Paul, but I'm going to wait until William comes back, and I'm going to see if I could fix my light too, because my light I don't know why it's so dark.
I think it's because you're not wearing your hat, and so all light is being reflected by your skull cap.
There might be something to that because the computer, the lights are on. I see. I didn't do anything.
But your hat's on.
It's the computer itself adjusting it. I'm not touching any knobs here.
Wow, boy, that makes a difference. You pull back 6 inches, and geez,
it's the digital. The computer. I didn't touch the lights in the room. It's just the computer, the digital thing. The server. We're having server issues tonight. That's what I noticed because William couldn't communicate, and my light keeps changing. But I don't think it's happening on my computer. I think it's the Zoom server that's doing it.
Well, who knows? But anyhow, we're all here, and you're still recognizably white, even with your hat. So,
yeah, but you would think it would get darker, right? Like it gets darker when you take the hat off, and the computer makes it lighter when you see.
Fill us back so you can ask Paul your question.
Well, my question is, Paul. He went out and he was able to protest today. He goes out to the trucker strikes, and they don't give him a hard time. But here, I'm actually a committee person for the local Republican Party, and based off of my political views, because I think we need to start thinking about white nationalism seriously. Conservatives here, they won't want me there. It bothers them to no end that I'm elected to that position. I mean, they absolutely hate it. And but in Canada, they don't seem to give Paul a hard time. At least I don't think they do. And not all those people are conservative. Some of them are liberal, but they still don't give him a hard time. They let him.
Well, it depends. But this it started with the end of lockdown movement, and it is now more into focusing on support for the truckers and just the general issues of an end to all the lockdowns and all the restrictions that we have faced and to some extent continue to face. Now, there's already acceptance. At the protest today, one of the guys said, "Oh, somebody's occupying your office." I didn't get it at first. It was City Hall. I ran for mayor in the last election, and I said, "Oh yeah, you're right. The best man did not win." So they laughed, and another guy said, "Oh, this guy was denounced as a white supremacist." And some other guy says, "Well, I'm a white nationalist." There's a kind of a ready acceptance. Now, that wouldn't be the case everywhere, but it's a very broad, easygoing coalition. I mean, there are people, who probably voted for the Green Party in the last election. It is kind of a new agey, back to the earth. I'm not making fun of anybody. I'm just saying that that's kind of a type. Then there are libertarians like myself, and then there's a lot of working people. There's a lot of people who lost their jobs when there were the lockdowns and so on. Yeah, it's a pretty good coalition, readily accepted of people.
Do you think that Canadian tolerance has something to do with that? I mean, William, Charles, what do you think? I mean, the Canadians pride themselves on being more tolerant. They always did.
Oh, no, that's bullshit. I mean, that's what we pride ourselves on. We're the nice guys. Americans are rash and all that, but no, there's a real meanness and nastiness in Canada. Don't kid yourself.
Okay.
Yeah,
Here,
I think times are changing.
There he is.
I went to a John Birch Society meeting a couple of days ago, and I hadn't been for a long time, but I needed to make an announcement there. And in the past, the John Birch Society didn't want to have anything to do with me because I said the W word too many times. I was pro-white. But now I can see that they are softening up. And so it's, as a general rule, the mainstream or even the extreme conservatives are often the most anti-white because they don't want, or anti-white nationalists because they don't want to be seen in our camp, and so they overreact and be prejudiced against me. But I can see that's coming around, and now I think Donald Trump led the way. Since his presidency, every white person is a racist and a white supremacist, and so I think that helps with more acceptance.
Charles, could you bring up the Birch Society webpage? Is it do they have a webpage or are they secretive?
Oh, sure. I mean, they're not secretive at all. They actually have a fabulous set of videos that they come out with something almost every day. But they are a very active group. I mean, what was the announcement that you made, Bill? Because that's kind of interesting.
Well, we're going to be putting on this play in Southern California before we go to Branson, Missouri, and so we want to just get people to turn out for it. But it is interesting. Many years ago, not that many years ago, maybe 6 or 7 years ago, we had stay with us a Finnish high school student. She was from Finland. She was an exchange student, and in the course of our discussion, living at our dining room table, we were talking about Ronald Reagan, and she says, and she spoke English excellently. She says, "Who's Ronald Reagan?" She didn't know who Ronald Reagan was. And then so I took one of my kids to this John Birch Society meeting, and she says, "What's the John Birch Society?" And so you got to realize that younger generations, they don't have the same experiences that we have, and they just don't know these things. We have to tell them. Of course, I don't know who Puff Daddy is, or some of their icons, but they don't know who ours are either.
Big question is, do you know who Britney Spears is?
Even that, but our kids wouldn't, because even that, Britney Spears is too young for us, but too old for them. So it's got to be, we got to have something that they can relate to. But yeah,
well, Sean, what was it you wanted to see on the John Birch page?
I didn't really know exactly what it is.
You don't know what the John Birch Society is?
No.
Oh my God, it is.
Okay.
I mean, Bill, you introduce it.
All right, let me tell you what I told my daughter. I said there was, after the Korean War, I think it was, there was a Christian missionary by the name of John Birch, who was in China preaching Christianity, and the communists killed him. And so there was a famous candy maker, very wealthy. I think his name was Welch, and he started a conservative anti-communist organization that would be going after the communists in America, and he called it the John Birch Society, named it after this Christian missionary, John Birch, who was just a young zealot, had no name for himself, but they named it after him because he was killed by the communists. And I said to my daughter, I said, "Well, now, do you know what like a sugar baby is and sugar daddy? You know what those are? Because those were the candies that this Mr. Welch created." And my daughter says, "I know what a sugar daddy is, and I haven't got one." And so she didn't even know that sugar daddy and sugar baby were candies when we were growing up. They were popular candies. And then I went on to tell her, well, the president of the John Birch Society was living in Southern California, and he took a plane ride to going to Japan or China or whatever, and he went on Korean Airlines, and they drifted into Soviet airspace, and the Soviets shot him down and killed everybody in that plane, and including the president of the John Birch Society. And I said, at that time, I was legal counsel for Korean Airlines, and they decided to change their name to Korea Air because they thought that would get rid of the taint, and it's still the same thing. But I said, so yeah, I was an attorney. I was doing legal work in Los Angeles as a attorney. They had a lot of it. I had a couple projects for Korean Airlines when the president of John Birch Society was killed by the Soviets flying in their airspace. And so that was the story I said about it. But the John Birch Society was a very popular conservative organization in the 50s and the 60s and even in the 70s. Like in 1972, I was going to Brigham Young University, no, 1974, I guess it was, or so maybe it must have been 76 because I came back from my mission. I was going to Brigham Young University in Provo, and one guy came into a meeting with us, and he says, "Oh, my car just got all the windows knocked out," and he was just coming to some like a family-owned meeting or some church meeting, and we said, "Well, what happened?" He says, "Well, I have a John Birch Society bumper sticker, and someone in Provo, Utah, didn't like it, so they busted out all his windows." So even back in the mid 1970s, the tolerant left in Mormondom would be smashing windows of someone who had a bumper sticker, the John Birch Society bumper sticker on their car. So, and they've kind of they're kind of moribund now. I mean, there's still movement in a lot of different areas. But I went to this meeting a couple of days ago, and I was the youngest person there by many years. So.
Oh, how dreadful! That's very discouraging because they are coming up with a whole bunch of good videos. I'll just show Sean their podcast. They've got all these different series, and basically they cover a lot of good topics. And I mean, they don't ever talk about race.
Well, who's this guy? This looked like the guy that headed the organization. I wonder if this bald-headed guy. I wonder if he's the head of the LH. Oh no, yeah, no, yeah. This might be the guy that was at the meeting.
Paul Ragu.
Oh no, wrong guy.
When that plane went down in
Russia.
Was that I think that happened when I was in the military. Was that in like 1988, 87, 89, 91?
I would have said it probably was 1984.
Okay.
That's my guess. But you can easily look it up and confirm whether I'm right or not. But it was the shoot. Actually, why don't you do that, Charles? Why don't you the destruction of the Korean Airlines over Russia?
Yeah, KAL 007.
Yeah, and
that was Congressman Larry McDonald of Georgia.
Oh, I thought he was a guy from Southern California.
No, that was John Schmidt.
Yeah, John Schmidt. So
Schmidt, that wasn't Schmidt. Schmidt. I met Schmidt years and years later when he moved out to Virginia and was actually owned a vineyard.
Oh, okay. Now, John Schmidt is the father of that gal that ran off with the Samoan.
Oh, Letourneau. Yes, the screwball.
What's this? I don't know this story.
Well, it's a good one.
Paul. Good, Paul.
No, you tell it.
Okay. Well, basically, John Schmidt was the head of the John Birch Society, who did not die in Russia on Korean Airlines flight, like I thought. But in any event, he had a daughter who taught junior high school in Orange County, and she became infatuated with a Samoan junior high school kids, left her husband and 2 or 3 white kids, and went together with this Samoan guy. And then she got convicted of child molestation, whatever, and had to spend some time in jail. She had a baby by him. And when she got out 5 or 6 years later, she rejoined him. She was still with the Samoan. So, and she was the daughter of the president of the John Birch Society. Have I got that right, Paul?
Yeah, that's basically it. And yeah, she stuck with us, Samoan, and she's dead now. She died relatively young.
Well, yeah, okay. From brain
What,
damage.
overdose?
Hmm?
Of drugs? Did she die of drugs?
No,
I don't know.
I don't know.
This is weird, but it doesn't mention mention anyone in particular who died there at all. Let's see if Wikipedia does.
Putting Congressman Larry McDonald, and I think that's MC.
Oh, there it is,
Donald.
including Larry McDonald. But I am correct that he was the head of the John Birch Society, right, Paul?
I think so.
He was head. I don't think he was head. He was a member.
He was certainly an open bircher. He wasn't a crypto.
Okay.
And I think I do remember that plane. Now, that plane actually did have a covert mission, didn't it? Weren't they also using, wasn't the U.S.?
Oh, that's what the FBI would say probably, but no, I don't think so. It's just Korean Airlines. The pilot just didn't know what he was doing.
The congressman who, can you all see these? Are these still being broadcast?
Yes.
Yeah, I can see him.
The congressman he created his own deep state, really. When he feared communists were infiltrating, Larry McDonald took extreme measures, building his own intelligence gathering arm. Let's see. The tale of Representative Larry McDonald might be the weirdest, most unbelievable one in modern American history that you've never heard. It isn't entirely without precedent. Private spy rings can be traced all the way back to the 1920s. It doesn't say this stuff so far. Doesn't say anything about how he died, but he warned of the spread of communist conspiracy. Oh, Bill? Did you think any more about California Government Code 1027.5? Speaking of conspiracy theories.
Oh wait, this is what the Congress views were closely aligned with the John Birch Society. The Birch Society. Oh wait. Larry was knocking on the door to people. I guess I thought he was a president when he died, but of course I met the wrong person who died in it, so I'm not sure. But yeah, I was going to look more into that, but I forgot. I'm sorry.
But you know, if Sam were with us tonight, he has another take on it. He knew McDonald, and McDonald was absolutely no friend of white nationalists. He was he would have been no use to us, no help at all.
That's the way all of the arch conservatives were back then, and now I think it's slowly changing.
Good.
But yeah.
Back in Georgia, things were getting even stranger. At the urging of several new right giants, Kathy McDonald declared herself a candidate in the special election to replace her husband. It was, she recalled, the most difficult thing she had ever done in her life. She faced an unusual, deep-pocketed foe. In 1978, Larry Flint, the publisher of Hustler magazine, had faced an obscenity charge in Gwinnett County, Georgia, near McDonald's hometown. During the trial, Flint survived an assassination attempt by a serial killing white supremacist who objected to the interracial pornography in Flint's magazine. Not the pornography.
You know about that story, don't you?
No, I don't.
What happened was this one-eyed, he was a one-eyed white supremacist, and he wanted to kill Martin Luther King. And he'd shot and killed a bunch of people. He shot and killed some interracial joggers, white and black joggers in Salt Lake City. And so I forget his name. He was executed a few years back. But he wanted to shoot Martin Luther King, but he couldn't shoot Martin Luther King. And so he picked up a Hustler magazine, which was promoting maybe when Martin Luther King died along, he was going to shoot someone else. Maybe it wasn't Martin Luther King was dead by that time. He was going to shoot some black man. He couldn't do it. So he saw a Hustler and had interracial intimacy on the cover of it. So he says, well, there's my next target. So he waited and he shot Larry Flint and didn't kill him, but it made him paralyzed from the waist down. So Larry Flint moved out to Los Angeles, and he had Flint Publications, and he also had some casinos, some card casinos. And so the pornography industry really went downhill with the advent of the internet, but the casino business really took off. So he was very wealthy from running all these casinos, and he turned the business over to his daughter, kind of like what Hugh Hefner did. And I can't imagine how you raise your kids so you can turn over that type of business to your daughter. But he was shot and he was paralyzed from the waist down. His wife died of AIDS, and I think he died recently. But I guess he was running against the wife of Larry McDonald. So, and this was in 1978. So I guess the destruction of America was happening a long time ago, not just today.
Is that there is still that huge Flint building? Is it in Beverly Hills or just east of Beverly Hills?
Yeah, it's still there. Last time I went to Beverly Hills, it was still there, and that was Flint Publications. But he has the Hustler Casino in Gardena, and where all the Chinese money, they launder all their money. They bring all their money in and spend it. So he was very wealthy, and he was always trying to be accepted in the various world, I guess, in the legitimate world, but he never really was. And so I think, and I might be mistaken, that when they had the recall of Gray Davis or whomever they recalled, he was running, he wanted to become governor or stuff like that. So I don't know.
I mean, he ran against Schwarzenegger.
He ran against Angelina, who was that gal, had her buxom billboard posters all around LA in pink. She, I don't know. There was like 40 or 50 candidates. I think he was one of them. I don't know.
Well,
I want to ask Paul about, wasn't Paul recently on a news show, or he was featured on one of those evening news broadcasts? I saw something about that.
so he was political cesspools several times.
Wasn't there like some news documentary, some Canadian national news show that's like once a week or something like that? Maybe it was.
I'm not sure that there are such, but I'm just wondering what you mean.
I thought you were interviewed by some nightly news or a weekly news. Do
you remember what it was about?
No, because we couldn't see it here. It was just I saw something posted on Facebook, and I saw a picture of you sitting down with someone interviewed you, but in fact, it hadn't aired yet. I think it was something was posted and it said it's going to air, but it could have been an old post. And
it might have been. There was one about exposing racism in Canada. I gave them an interview, but it's been repeated recently. But it was taped about 4 or 5 years ago. It's not exactly.
I thought it had something to do with the truckers. Thought there was something like that.
I think you're mixing him up with Ryan Gosling because they look so much alike.
Oh. All right. I thought there was
the noise in the background.
I thought you were interviewed about the truckers.
Can you all hear the noise in the background?
The chirping. Yeah.
Oh no! There's it's kind of loud in here. There's a band going by. They're having an Irish Italian St. Patrick's parade right now.
I can't hear it. It's filtered out.
Yeah.
But is there a chirping of a smoke detector? Is that in my place or
no? It is definitely mine, and it's been several people have complained about it this week. But I live in this place. My ceilings are 14 feet high, and I don't have a ladder, and I've got to borrow a ladder to do it.
Okay. That's good, because I was afraid that I was going to have to go through my house and find out and locate it. I'm glad it's yours and not mine.
No, it's definitely mine. But I'm not 14 feet tall. I mean, I wish I was. It'd be interesting.
All right, here I have another question here, and this is gonna bother everybody, but I'll ask it anyway. Paul, do you watch Murdoch Mysteries?
Yes, from time to time. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. That's my mother and I watched that. I like the era, but the show is incredible. It's very liberal. It's like every television show out there. They slip so much liberal stuff in there that just would not have been the case back
Oh
then.
no, it's completely ahistorical. His girlfriend or whatever, she's an accomplished, I think, what was it, scientist. Very few women were in those days. It pushes all the right buttons about feminism and so on.
Yeah.
I mean, the plots are moderately interesting, and they do try more or less to capture some of the the color of that era before the First World War. But it's let's say highly imaginative.
Yeah. But
Charles, who's Jessica Rivas?
Jessica, come and speak and come and show yourself.
Oh, do I have to? Hold on.
Yes, you do. Who is Bill Johnson wants to know who is Jessica Rivas? And so
I recognize her voice.
can you recognize behind her the flag of the League of the South?
Yeah, I recognize her.
She has other flags in there too, but that's the only one you can see right now because she's so dark. Why are you so dark?
Yeah, that's because I am tired and I don't want. I just didn't feel like, dressing up and all that crazy stuff. Anyway,
Well, anyhow,
I've been working today.
Jessica is speaking to us from close to the city of Danville, which was the last capital of the Confederacy, and Jessica is a great Confederate patriot, and so she believes, and I suspect she might be right, that she is the actual cause of my being banned on Facebook.
Oh no!
Because I basically I quoted her so many times, I had her on so many times, and she says that there's basically, speaking of conspiracies, basically hit conspiracy out to get her because she has been so active. She is DAR, UDC, Confederate Rose. What else are you? I forget.
Well, I mean, I'm pretty much just League right now.
But you were at
that
one
gets
point
me in
in
enough trouble.
huh?
I said that pretty much gets me in a lot of trouble already. But I mean, I'm still UDC, but I haven't paid my DAR in a while. So, because they do stuff, but it's not like the UDC. Well, the UDC don't do anything anymore either, but we used to do actually events and stuff like that. But like I said, generally just League. But yeah, they deplatform me from Facebook, of course, first, in which I call that a blessing. And they actually use their fake profile names so that they would delete me off of there. They got off of Venmo and PayPal, and I even had a fundraiser on GoFundMe. So I was like, and so when other people would actually use my picture on their Facebook account, they would actually get put in jail. So I think that's what happened to Charles. I warned him, but he didn't listen. And then next thing you know, they deleted him. So
every time that happens, I think it's important to holler and say, isn't it great to live in the land of the free and the home of the brave? This cancel culture is just poison, and there are so many people that are prepared to go right along with it. I'm maybe a different topic, but I am not comfortable with this idea of seizing the assets of the of the Russian oligarchs. Canada's doing it. The UK is doing it. I think the US is doing it. I'm no fan of them, and many of them are from a religion I don't like. And I'll be prepared to admit they probably got a lot of their money illegal, by nefarious means. But if you're prepared to have them in your country and have their investment, their deposits in your country, I think it's a bad precedent to just steal the money, and that's what they did to some of the leaders of the truckers in Canada and some of their backers, including one woman who was a minimum wage single mom. She gave $50, and her bank account was frozen. I think it's a really bad precedent. Sure, these are bad guys. Fine, boot them out of the country if that's but to steal the money that they've got, bad precedent. I mean, they might decide next that you're a white nationalist and you're a bad guy. Well, steal freeze your bank account. The sky's the limit with these psychopaths.
Yeah. Well, I think we all need to be Sean's level. He has no money to steal. So I don't know. That's but yeah, I agree with you there. Okay, Charles, what's next?
Well, I mean, Jessica, I had originally invited Jessica because I wanted her to interact with Sam and Jason about thinking about the issue we started out with, which was Dylan Storm Roof. And I'd like to hear, I mean, Jessica wrote an interesting thing earlier today, which was, and I quote, "It's like we all pulled the trigger." And I responded by saying, our favorite well-headed group, they have come up with this concept of collective responsibility. And I wanted to discuss that concept of collective responsibility a little bit, but also hear what Jessica had to say about, the possibility of the one you didn't like, the possibility that Dylan Storm Roof was set up by Barack Obama coincidentally in the last year of his presidency.
Well, a little bit of before, we're talking about the Russians. I'll hit on that real quick. But, ultimately the people that are being brutalized at this point is the civilians, just like in every other war. They're all these politicians and stuff. They're well off. They're not going to worry about the money scenario. But when you're doing sanctions on these other countries, who are you ultimately hurting? Well, it's trickling down to the United States, obviously. But can you imagine what the Russians are going through right now? And it's not. They're not the ones who decided that whole misadventure, or even the Ukrainians or whatever. But about that, and then of course, like I said, with the us pulling the trigger, it seems like we're all to blame. I mean, it seems like it was all kind of preloaded in a sense, similar to the George Floyd incident. We were always the low-hanging fruit with the Confederacy, and however they could, they wanted to attack it and delete it at all costs. And I mean, it just so happens that he had a tag on the front of his car, and he had this little bitty, stick flag, and then all of a sudden it was just a complete all attack on the Confederacy and everything to do with it, and its people and its monuments. And then of course that didn't work as efficiently as they thought. So then they brought in the George Floyd. So what does the Confederacy have to do with, the police officer allegedly killing George Floyd? So they were going to take down our monuments and destroy us and shut us down in every aspect. So,
well, I mean, there were 6 years. There was what, 5, 6? Was it 5 years or 6 years between Dylan Storm Roof and George Floyd? I'm getting confused now. When were the riots? Was that was May of May June
5 years.
2020, right?
This 2015 when the Dylan Roof thing went about. And then, of course, 2020 was the year of BLM rioters.
I think
Yeah.
that what inspired me to talk about this again today was that I got this news item that a very small conservative red voting town in western Louisiana called Opelousas, just off I-10, has voted, their city council voted unanimously to remove their Confederate monument. And I mean, it's sort of surreal. Why at this moment is that happening? Why are people, why are people agitating still for the removal of Confederate monuments? I mean, hasn't it gone far enough?
Is it fear?
The fear of being called racist is so overwhelming to these people that they will continue to do everything to destroy their heritage. Just before I got in there, I was just surfing the internet, and I saw some sort of little video where somebody opened the front door and the little baby puppy, they got a puppy for their birthday or for Christmas or whatever it is, and the little kid was looking at it, another little kid looked at it, and then the parents were in the back filming this, and it came out that there were 7 beautiful little white children, or 8, actually 8 children looking at this puppy. And you read the comments, and they're all saying, "Oh, how selfish of this family to have all these kids," and all these white people are ragging on this family for having all these white kids. And it's just they want to say, you know, they're attacking because it's white. They attack everything they do. If the white do it, it's bad. And that it's the same attitude. Until we can become proud of our heritage and not be afraid of being called racist, this is going to continue on and on and on. And I think we've reached the turning point. Pretty soon, that's gonna be water off the duck's back, calling us racist.
Let me ask you this: what ever happened to that group of people who drove pickup trucks past somebody's house and it had Confederate flags in? Remember, they got sent to prison for like 30 years, and all they did was drive the vehicles past with flags. Now, I understand the argument that people said, well, they were clearly here threatening us. Maybe they were, maybe they weren't. They were found guilty of doing that. But isn't BLM marching down the street, waving flags and tearing signs out and throwing rocks and bricks, basically the same thing and even worse? You know, why aren't all those protesters serving 30 years in prison?
Yeah, we live in an upside down world. That couple, I think, she was white, he was Hispanic, and they went down and they yelled things at a black Christmas, a birthday party group of people, and they got years in jail for that. And it's just the silliest thing. Why? Because the jurors were made up of white people, and they didn't want to be considered to be racist. So they'll sacrifice freedom of speech. They'll sacrifice our freedoms to show that they're not racist. And it happens over and over and over again. Like that, those black kids, or not kids, I guess they were adults, in New York City that attacked this Columbia girl, chased her down, and she got away. They chased her down, they killed her and stabbed her, and they got 9 years in prison. And then you had this Aubrey case where you had the guy that took a picture, just took a photograph, like it was photographed, he got life in prison. So, you know, this is an upside down world, and it goes hand in hand to the statement that you made, Sean, that the empires don't last, and we're on the last legs. We're gonna dissolve because we cannot live in this type of situation. We cannot live with them, and we cannot live with us because so many of our people are so perverted and messed up.
I thought, you know, I agree with what you said. I thought we were also going to look at, and I know it edges close to a conspiracy theory, but there are, I think, several possibilities about Dylan Roof. What was reported is essentially true, or Dylan Roof was perhaps controlled, and that may sound a little weird, but he was psychologically pretty vulnerable, perhaps programmed to commit this atrocity. And then this was a perfect excuse to get rid of the Confederate monuments and flags, and to have another big defamation of white nationalism and so on. Now, that may seem a little far-fetched. The one thing that that niggles in the back of my mind is Dylann Roof had no background. He had not been involved in the white nationalist movement. He caused us at the Council of Conservative Citizens no end of grief because he said he'd learned about black crime on the council's website. Well, geez, if you had to go to the council to learn about black crime, you are pretty out of it. I mean, you live in an area where there's a lot of black crime, but that one thing alone caused meeting venues to be canceled, and caused just incredible harm. I'm not saying that's the whole reason that it was done, but it seemed like a great excuse for a guy who comes out of nowhere, has no background, but goes the absolute limit, goes into a black church and starts killing mostly elderly Negro women. Well, that's psycho stuff. Well,
and perversely, he was talking about rape, talking to black women about rape of white women. I mean, to me, it just totally stinks. There's one other detail I should add to the reason I favor conspiracy theory here. It's very personal and it's very related to New Orleans. I haven't taken the trolley at all, the streetcar, since COVID started, but because they require masks and I just refuse to do it. But prior to COVID, I took the streetcar all the time. And in April, May, and June of 2015, before it happened, there were these little really cheap flyers talking about all the Confederate heritage around New Orleans and how all these streets were named after Confederates, all these monuments, all these plaques, all these houses, and they all needed to be removed because they were all symbolic of racism and the desire to kill black people.
Well, okay, my take on this is that I'm happy to impugn and malign the FBI, the CIA, and the DOJ. But I just think it's a little too far-fetched to say that they got this white guy to go shoot a bunch of black people and kill them. I just think that's a little bit. I mean, don't get me wrong. I would love to impugn the FBI in that regard. But I think it's a little bit too far.
What about that shooter in Las Vegas? I mean, wasn't he an anti-gun guy, and he somehow thought by doing this shooting it would somehow help his political movement? Wasn't he angry about the fact that it was easy to buy guns, and he didn't think it should be easy to buy guns? So because they wouldn't pass the gun laws he wanted, he decided, well, then he'll go out and buy guns and he'll shoot people. Isn't that the same story with the guy in the baseball field who shot the congressman, members of Congress when they were playing baseball? Wasn't something similar going on there?
That's Steve Scalise. That's our local congressman right here.
But wasn't the shooter, one of those two shooters had advocated against guns? He wanted strict gun laws, and he was mad because he couldn't get them passed, and he decided, all right, you don't pass gun laws, and I'm gonna go buy a gun, and I'll show you how bad things can be. Wasn't one of those two something? Wasn't there something to that with one of them?
It could have been. I mean, there goes hand in hand with what happened in Norway. You had this guy that was really upset with all of these with all the immigration. He killed a bunch of little white boys and girls, and he's in jail in Norway probably 15 years is all. But there's a lot of people that do that, but I don't think that's conspiracy. I just think that's the twisted mind of the shooter.
Okay, one final question, Bill. Do you believe that Hillary Clinton has ever killed anybody?
Well, it depends on your definition of when life starts. 'Cause, she had one child, and knowing Clinton's libido, I think that it didn't. I think she probably took care of several of her kids. In fact, I think she admitted that she took care of several of her
Well, but
kids.
I mean, okay, I was asking about the theory that she has caused the death of many adults.
How's that?
Well,
Benghazi.
I'm getting the feeling you don't read the internet very much. You need to. You're obviously working too hard and not spending nearly enough time exploring conspiracy theories on the internet.
I think that there is a convergence of interest in a lot of different areas, but I think it doesn't rise to the level of conspiracy. I basically don't believe in conspiracy. However, I do believe that a lot of this stuff attacking Trump with his Russian stuff, there was conspiracy there. You know.
Oh, how about you? What do you know about Hillary Clinton's her? I mean, just if you Google Hillary, they call her Killary.
Hillary.
Huh?
Hey, what? I'm surprised that they haven't off that one woman that worked with Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, I noticed she's well protected. She hasn't committed suicide yet. That's kind of interesting.
You mean Ghislaine Maxwell?
That's the one.
Yeah, I do believe though that there is a level of conspiracy in keeping the names out of the news with regard who was associated with Jeffrey Epstein. And
Yes.
I think there is a concerted effort to keep that out, and that would certainly be a conspiracy to keep those names out.
Who do you think killed him? Do you really think he committed suicide?
No.
Oh, I don't know. Let's blame the FBI because I don't like that.
Well, anyhow, but okay, I'm going to push this, and Paul, I'd like to hear your take on it too. Does it make any difference at all that Hillary Clinton was in South Carolina speaking to several members of the congregation of African Methodist Episcopal Church of the day of the attack, the murder? Does that make us any more suspicious at all?
I didn't know that. I find the whole thing suspicious. I've known, I've been involved in politics a very long time, probably as long as Bill, and I've known many people, across the spectrum. But it's very rare that somebody would go from a position of being basically apolitical to the max, going to kill people, and not in sort of a situation where he was ambushed or confronted. No, I mean, Dylan Roof apparently went to that church with a gun, with the intent of killing people, killing unarmed people. I guess because they were black. But if you've got a beef with black, and he was concerned about black crime. If you had a beef with black crime, well, there'd be plenty of parts of Charleston where you could probably find potential black criminals, young and male. And if that was the object of your anger, that would be the course to take. I find that progression from apolitical within a couple of months to I'm going to go and kill people, very peculiar. I know he had mental problems, and one of the defenses that I don't know if it was tried, but was certainly talked about, was the police found him a couple of months before the shooting in possession of a drug that was given to people, I believe, trying to get off addiction, and it has unpredictable results. Like it can make you very violent. It's a mood-changing drug, and whether that will be a defense for Roof, I don't know. But could it be? And again, we're speculating. Could he have been manipulated or be persuaded this would be a good thing? But because it didn't seem to be in his character. He was not a violent person. He'd not been a political person. He hadn't gone, through the route of that many people did, from being either kind of Ayn Rand, libertarian, to moderate conservative, to becoming more and more, I would say, informed and perhaps therefore radical. He goes from, just an uninvolved guy to full blown murder. I find that hard to handle.
But you may be right there. If he did take the drugs, he might have been susceptible to that. But I think we have to realize that we live in such a crazy, turned up world. We're just now seeing the consequence of it. I mean, I just read recently the other day that there was a Stanford soccer player by the name of Katie Meyer, just a beautiful young blonde gal. She killed herself because she was going to be investigated for helping some other student. So she decided to kill herself. And you've got all sorts of college kids who are killing themselves. So it is a reflection of it is a result of the society that we live in. We are so messed up now, and we're on the last stages of our empire, that these type of incidences, death, killing, either whether you kill yourself or kill others, happens more and more because we've lost our anchor. And I don't think that rises to the level of conspiracy. It just rises it just shows what a destructive, messed up society we live in today.
I think one of the biggest. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I mean, I can myself vouch for that. I mean, when you get like the situation I've been going through for since 2019, I go from well, actually even before then, 2016, I was happy-go-lucky. I was in all these organizations, and I was one of those. I mean, I wasn't one of those heritage, not hate type, but I was one of the ones that I kind of stayed low key. And then I was attacked by Antifa in my hometown. So that obviously changed me dramatically, and it made me a totally different person. And of course, as the time progressed and Charlottesville happened, and then of course, and they decided to dox me online. So then that set me a course. And then when I was arrested in 2019, of course, it has dramatically changed my whole scope on everything. And it tends, people don't think about this stuff, but the way that people's emotions are, stuff like that, it will tend to make people do stuff. And I mean, maybe that's what happened with him. Maybe there was a particular instance in his life that made him just, I guess, lose it. And then of course the drugs and stuff like that probably was an add-on to it.
Okay, but don't you go do something crazy.
Oh, no, I'm not. No, I'm not. It's just basically like, a change, a complete turnaround from what I used to be. Like I said, I mean, I was the one that maybe if you'd say I was a racist, like, but today I was like, yeah, okay, now what? So it's changed my whole perspective on everything. But, no, I'm not like, violent or nothing like that, but I'm just saying, even with my own personal perspective, the way that I have changed, obviously someone else could be changed as well, and maybe even more further or radical. And then, like I said, the drugs. I mean, I'm not on drugs or nothing like that, but with him, with that influence as well. And again, whatever traumatic things that ever happened to this guy in real life, because they don't talk about that kind of stuff. They pretty much just say, hey, here's this racist white guy, and he went in here and shot these really good black people. But they're not saying anything else about his history or his life.
Well, basically, he didn't have one, and that's Paul's point. He had no history at all. He's not like Charles Manson. He hadn't been involving a.
Is it on purpose? Is it on purpose that his life be deleted off the public eye on purpose?
I think it could be because of what I understand about his Facebook friends, for instance. I mean, I have to admit, I'm one of these really bad guys. I really don't have any black Facebook friends at all. I know it just reflects terribly on me and shows me to be a man of very bad character, but that's been established many times anyhow. But Dylan Storm Roof had lots of black friends. He was a good guy. He played sports with other black kids. He went out with in parties with black people, and so you've got to sort of ask, how does that person? It's not just that he was apolitical; he was totally normal. I mean, even doing a little bit of drugs, that basically puts him likely on the liberal side, rather than belonging to some church like Bill, where they really strongly discourage that. My church doesn't give a damn. So,
Well, I mean, it goes back then, back to what I said before. So something happened to this guy. Maybe his black friends that he had did something to him. Maybe they something that reflected on him very terribly to the point where he would do something like that. I mean, it really makes you think the psychological aspect of it. What was going through in his head. I mean, there could have been he was a part of these groups, and then they maybe beat the hell out of him, or maybe they kicked him out of their group, or they said something that distorted his mindset, and then that's why he did it. I mean, but they don't put that out there. Just like all the other people, whenever somebody supposedly gets a hate crime, they go through and do open source intelligence, and they just pick through this person's life entirely, all the way. And I mean, it's easy to do these days with social media, because you tell everything that you eat, everything you do, everywhere you go, and who you know. And so maybe with this, this guy being attacked, I mean, it's a really bad thing, because I mean, you got your families that'll get attacked, and then all their friends will get attacked, and it's just a really bad scenario that we have with all these social media accounts. So we gotta I don't know. I mean, stop putting so much stuff on the internet, because it can be really bad. Charles?
I'd like to ask, how many teachers and preachers over the past 2 years, 3 years, sat their class down and told them that all of these riots you see, and the burning of the police stations, and the throwing of the Molotov cocktails into police cars, all of that is wrong, and those people should not be handling their political frustrations by engaging in these riots and destroying property and throwing Molotov cocktails in police cars and burning down police stations? How many teachers and preachers sat young people down and told them that, and still have their position? I'm sure there were a few, and I'm sure they were drummed out of their jobs and drummed out of their churches. And the people who sat the kids down in the classrooms when they came back to school were told to tell those kids that these riots and this violence, that in this situation, it's justified, it's okay because of da-da-da-da-da. So that means you have kids who are in their formative years, they're still going to school, and their grades are still in the classes they're in are still in the single digits. They're not even in 10th grade yet. And they're learning that all those riots and stuff they saw on the news over that year were okay. It was the right way to do things. So now you're forming their minds, and then, they're 18, 20, 21, and they start to encounter a difficult situation in life. They encounter some sort of political thing they disagree with, and they were taught from a young age that, well, in certain situations, it's okay to then throw the Molotov cocktails and to use the violence. How much? Well, I don't know. I guess I made my point. I guess I don't really have a question.
I mean, Sean, I'm gonna sound like very uncharacteristically like a liberal for about 2 seconds here. Human beings have always been violent. I mean, my grandmother kept all of her letters for her entire life, and I remember reading, some of her letters when she was a little girl to one of her aunts. She had an aunt that she dressed as Dear Aunt Belle, and he wrote to Aunt Belle about everything that she was doing, and just as a sort of throwaway line, talking about the news, she said, and a nigger got lynched for killing a little girl. It was violence was part of life. I mean, whether we think that's due process of law or not, it was something that people did, and it was something that my grandmother as a little girl was aware of and thought was kind of routine. And a nigger got lynched for killing a little girl. I mean, there were no riots. Of the lynch mob was sometimes a riot. Was it a good thing or a bad thing? I'm not 100% sure. It was cheaper than our justice system today, and it may have been accurate.
Right.
Maybe this black guy did kill a little girl.
Yeah, but also you have to realize the times and what they lived in. Back then, death was a lot nearer to hand. Young death was a regular occurrence. I mean, both my grandparents, all four of my grandparents, they were parents of 15, 16 kids each, and only about half of them made it to adulthood. Children died young. And if you take a look at the death, the mortality rate in other countries back then, when your grandmother was writing that diary, death mortality was very high. And as a result, people did not place so much value on human life as we do now. And in fact, I think right now, maybe the most overrated commodity in the world is human life. But back then, people would sacrifice their lives for the better good. And nowadays, we want to preserve human life to such an extent that it destroys society. So we live in a different time today than then. Now, you can't, when you have all of these people, that these blacks that go into Walgreens in the inner cities and break down the locks on the cosmetic, and they stuff trash bagfuls of these commodities and take them out and sell them on the internet, and we sit around and do nothing to them. But in your grandmother's era, there would have been several people who would pull out their Colt 44 and gun those people down. And nowadays we would say, "Oh, that's terrible." In that days, they'd say, "Oh, that's great." So times are going to change, and we're going to be coming back, I think, to an era of where we're going to start gunning these people down, and then that's going to cause a breakdown of society, and we're going to have the dissolution of our empire, like Sean talked about last week.
Well, the criminal justice system throughout North America, there are differences between Canada and the U.S., but in general, I think has lost an awful lot of its credibility. The law or the approach you have in California there that they won't arrest shoplifters. Well, then the justice system simply isn't working.
Well, I agree. I don't think we should arrest shoplifters. I think we should do other things to them that would be a little swifter.
Well, I know you guys already know this, but you could get in much more trouble for saying something than you can for doing something.
That's right. That's absolutely right.
That's a good point.
Yeah, look at Charlottesville. That's a good point. And another thing, to think about too is like, okay, so the Reginald Denny thing, you remember the LA riots?
I know it.
Yeah, you had that Reginald Denny, that truck driver, caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. What did he have to do with the beating of what's his face?
Rodney King.
Yeah. So what did he have to do with that? Well, he had nothing to do with it. He was a white guy in a bad place. So then, did you hear the media crucify him like they did, Chauvin and the jogger killers? No. Basically, what happened to those people that were caught on video from a helicopter taking pieces of concrete and literally trying to smash this guy's head out of it? I mean, his brain out of his head. I mean, that should have been a hate crime, right? It should have been charged at every aspect from the state of California all the way to the federal hate crimes. But were they? I didn't hear anything about it. I mean, I
Well,
remember watching it on TV though, and I was terrified.
yeah, I personally am opposed to the concept of a hate crime,
Me too.
because people who do these acts, whether they're good acts in their or, in our mind or bad acts in their mind, they think it's good in their mind. They think, oh, this society would be better if we didn't have this white trucker in our neighborhood. So let's throw a brick on his head, Reginald Denny. Or you have a Dylan Roof that says, oh, I think society would be better if we shoot up all these black people. Now, I think that in their mind, they want to make society better by committing this crime. Therefore, it should not be an enhancement because they're doing what they think in their mind is better. Now, maybe it's because of prejudice or whatever, but it should not be an enhancement. And that's my reasoning. Of course, you guys are probably cringing with that a little bit.
No,
But,
Bill, I just got a question for you. You remember first year, I can't remember if you started at Columbia or Harvard, but I know you switched at some point. But in your first year of law school, I'm pretty sure you took a course called criminal law, right?
yes.
And has the common law not always regarded malice as an aggravating factor in any crime? And isn't malice basically means ill will, i.e., hatred?
Yep. And so so they don't need to have the hate crime portion of it. It's the same thing as like they've expanded the concept of rape to you have a husband can rape his wife. And so that just takes away from the concept of stranger rape. When you have somebody coming in and raping a stranger, if that's at the same level as someone who rapes his wife, that is, it just waters down that concept. So yeah, I think that malice was sufficient enough. They don't have to take another step and give it a separate enhancement called hate crime.
Up here in Canada, when they passed a law back about 30 years ago, making or allowing for stiffer sentencing if the crime is deemed a hate crime, we opposed it, not successfully, obviously. And it always struck me that the crime stands on its own. If I'm in a bad mood and I punch you in the nose, okay, I have punched you in the nose and done some damage to you, that's assault causing bodily harm. If I punch you in the nose because you're a homosexual, what does it matter? You still have a bloody nose and you're still being damaged. Or I punch you in the nose because you're black or white. The crime is the crime, and the crime should be punished on that basis. Your motives, I don't think particularly matter. If I punch you just because you're a conservative, well, that's not a hate crime. If I punch you because you're black, let's say, that to me that's unfair and unequal justice, and it's a concept that our enemies have used against us.
And that's like, take that a little one step further, is like we have in America, if you try to escape from prison or jail, that is a crime in itself, and you can be punished greater for that. But in Europe, they said, well, no, that's human nature. You want to escape. So it's not a punishment to try to escape from prison, because that's what everybody wants to do. So that's another way of looking at it.
Well, except a few people I know who are so bizarre that they behave in such a way that they wish to remain in prison, because some people actually consider prison their home. They would never admit it as such, but there's that odd psychological condition where some people, you and I would want to get out of prison, I presume, but there are some people who somehow it's their home.
Well, I mean, I think that there's some very sad social dynamics going on there, Paul.
There are.
Kids who end up in jail at 17 or 18 have literally not learned anything if they get a 10 or 20 year sentence at 17 or 18. tried as an adult at 16, even some cases. And I have seen over and over again cases where they basically came out into the world and basically committed the first crime they could find because they had been crippled. And I mean, what Bill says is about more severe punishment for shoplifters is kind of interesting because in the Anglo-Saxon common law, right up through the early 19th century, petty theft was a capital crime, and that had two effects. One was that it discouraged a lot of people from doing it, I'm sure. But the other one is that nobody was basically condemned to a form of non-Haitian zombiehood by going to jail and basically learning nothing about life. In some ways, I think that putting people in jail for long periods of time is much more cruel and unusual than death. Because
it sure helped populate Australia.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I mean, that was probably the best thing in the world. If you were in an English slum and committed some sort of crime and got deported to Australia, transportation for life was basically a grant of new life.
Yeah. I think that part of the reason why the law changed is the example that they gave was that if you stole a dog, that was petty cat theft, and you could be charged, you could be executed for stealing a dog. And they thought, that's kind of whacked out. So you steal a dog and you get executed for it, so they did away with it. But I think maybe we need to bring some of those laws back. I think petty theft and execution could go hand in hand.
Yeah, the thing was, they didn't develop really a police force until about the 1820s in Britain with Sir Robert Peel. That's why one of the nicknames for the police, at least in Britain today, are peelers. So when you didn't really have a permanent police force, how do you deter theft? Even like what we would call petty theft. Well, you've got to make the consequences of being caught really, really terrible. If the likelihood is that you will not be caught, then and it would be, I guess that there wouldn't be a lot of people caught when there wasn't much of a police force. Then you've got to make the consequences really terrible. If there's a fair likelihood you'll be caught, then you can reduce the consequences because the thief has a reasonable chance of being caught and in some ways punished. But now what seems to be happening in California is basically carte blanche to the feral sorts of people to steal.
Yeah.
Maybe what we could do is we could have a new form of deportation. There aren't that many empty spaces left in the world, but maybe we could, would this be a way of taking back part of the world to say, if you're a white man who's convicted of a petty crime, we're going to deport you to a black country?
Sure, that sounds good. Or yeah, I would agree with that. I think.
Well,
and basically, maybe they could take over, and it would be a form of upgrading the country.
One thing that's happened as a result of reducing the level of punishments is that more crimes were created. So there are more things that are illegal now that would have never been a crime, a century ago. And again, I'm going to fall back on speech because I've been charged and convicted twice for saying something. And if you went back in 1820s, my free speech would have been absolute. It would have been unthinkable that you could be charged for saying something. Now you might get challenged to a fight, might get challenged to a duel, might get but even there, if somebody challenged somebody to a fight today, they'll get charged for that.
Yeah, I mean, back when I was growing up, you'd have people, the sheriff and the guy in the black hat would come out in the street, and they'd pull their gun and see who could shoot each other first. And the sheriff wouldn't shoot the guy until the other guy started to draw his gun, and then they get shot down. But nowadays you have these no-knock warrants, and they come in and they knock a door, and you have a kid opens up the door holding a Game Boy controller, and the gal policeman pulls out the gun and shoots him dead. Because I thought he had a gun, and it was just a Game Boy controller. So back then you had, you can carry a gun, but you don't get shot until you point it and start pulling the trigger. Nowadays you hold a remote control in your own home, and you get shot dead by a female police officer. So you're right there.
Well, same thing with law enforcement. Law enforcement needs reform as just as much as criminals, because when you like in my instance, I'm charged with a crime that under the Second Amendment of the Constitution, that the Second Amendment is the only constitutional right that is absolute. It means what it says. No, it really doesn't mean that. But it says an absolute shall not be infringed. But then you have all these politicians that are trying to say, oh, no, that's not the way it says it, though. And then in the same instance, they could take a statute that was written, 30, 40 years ago, and they can just change it and manipulate it to form some kind of crime. And then, of course, you are guilty till you're proven innocent. And by that time, your whole life has changed. I mean, you are all over the internet. You're all over the paper. You've been basically crucified. They've doxed the crap out of you. And so they need to be able to, if you actually do a crime, okay, it's different. But, why formulate a crime just for political gain?
Yeah, that's a good point, because like the Democrats now are trying to get people disqualified from running for office, elected congressmen, because they spoke up in favor of the January 6th meetings with Trump at the Capitol. And they're saying, we got to take the insurrection clause of the 14th Amendment, meaning that they can't stand for office. So you're right. They're taking these old laws and misinterpreting them to crazy extent. Okay, you guys, I need to take off.
Okay, well, we've talked for an hour and a half, and thank you for putting up with us, Bill. I know you like to keep it to an hour, but I am going to try to reconvene this fairly soon to discuss Dylan Storm Roof again when we can have at least Sam Dixon and possibly Jason Kessler around to talk a little bit more about it, because I do feel like this whole issue of the Confederate monuments has become a crucial transformational thing in American society. And just in closing, I'd like to ask everybody to think about these two things. Paul and Sean were both talking about freedom of speech, but have you ever heard of the crime compassing the death of the king? Compassing the death of the king is part of Anglo-American, well, at least Anglo-Saxon and colonial American common law, where if you said anything that imagined the death of the king, that was a crime.
No,
look it up, compassing the death of the king. And then even farther back in history, we've got concepts like hubris in ancient Greece, and then interclass insults in the Code of Hammurabi and similar things, where basically for a lower class person to speak insults of a higher class person was a much greater offense than for two high class people to insult each other. Are we going back to something like that right now? And, basically it comes out. Sam Dixon said the most interesting thing a couple of weeks ago. He said, and I quote, "Any society that started off with the Declaration of Independence, all men are created equal, could not possibly end in any other way except as it has ended here."
Yeah, that was really quite thought provoking. I've been thinking about that too. We should talk about that more on another show.
And it all goes together. I mean, and just one other comment. Jessica has been alluding to it, but Jessica hears her fate from the North Carolina Court of Appeals on Tuesday about whether her atrocious crime of going armed to a protest to remove Confederate monuments, which was not a protest, is going to lead to the end of her Second Amendment rights.
With a permit to carry, so I can lawfully, legally carry a firearm, and that I was not part of a group who I did not even know the people that were there, but I got mixed into the group that I supposedly know these people that I refer to as those people over there. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we've got to come back again and talk about all these things. Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Jessica. And we will. Well, we might be able to do something tomorrow or Tuesday, but otherwise, it'll be a new season. And happy spring equinox to everybody.
Thanks a lot.
Happy and all the best to Jessica.
Okay.
I appreciate it.
We'll keep in touch. Good night.
God bless you all.
Thank you. God bless you.